Are y'all aware that in 6 years, there will be 1 ton of plastic for every 3 tons of fish? In this speech, I'm going to inform you over the effects of microplastics in the ocean. With my increasing interest in the topic, I've done research over these microplastics to be under more understanding of the problems we're dealing with. Today, I want to talk to you about the influences of microplastic in the ocean. I will explain to you what microplastics are, the prevalence of microplastics, and the effect they're having on the living world. First, I want to explain what microplastics actually are. Most people are not even aware of what microplastics are, or might not even know that they exist, just because they're super small. And while they are very small, they pose a very large risk. Microplastics are 5 millimeters in size, and the two most common types are polyethylene and polypropylene. They're hard to clean because you can imagine it's a lot easier to clean up water bottles and milk jugs, but it gets a little trickier when you have to clean up very small pieces of plastic. There are two main groups of microplastics: primary and secondary microplastics. Primary microplastics are from like cosmetics. They use very small pieces like toothpaste or scrubs. And polyethylene microbeads are used in beauty products as exfoliants. According to an article by National Ocean Service, What are microplastics? These tiny particles easily pass through water filtration systems and end up in the ocean and Great Lakes, posing a potential threat to aquatic life. Chemicals such as polyvinyl chloride and polystyrene release toxic chemicals associated with cancer and birth defects. Secondary microplastics are just larger plastics that have been broken down into smaller pieces by the waves, water, or UV rays from the sun. Now that I've informed you of what microplastics are, I want to explain to you the prevalence and how widespread they are in the microplastics. It's easy to ignore the problem just because they're not visible, but microplastics are working their way into even the most secluded areas of our oceans. When plastics are deposited into the ocean, they get picked up by circulating currents called gyres. These gyres form masses of trash and plastic. The most notable is the Great Garbage Patch, which is 1.6 million square kilometers, which is 3 times the size of France. This patch is just one of 5 gyres that naturally accumulate plastic in the ocean. One of the most heavily populated areas of plastic is the Mediterranean Sea. An investigation in the Adriatic Sea was conducted in 2015. This investigation analyzed samples of sediment and showed that plastic debris found were 65% microplastic, 30% mesoplastic, and 4% macroplastic. Now, mesoplastic is a little bit bigger than microparticles. They're from 5 millimeters to 20 millimeters, and macroplastics are just anything above 20 millimeters. Research from a project called Derelict Fishing Gear Management System in the Adriatic region did a study over these 3 fish, the red mullet, common pandora, and sardine. And while they found plastic in all 3 intestines of the fish, 63 of the 203 red mullets that were collected had plastic in them. These plastics are seemingly everywhere and have a negative effect on creatures. In the next section, I want to talk about the effect that microplastics are having on the living world. Even though larger sized plastics have an established reputation for being harmful, microplastics have harmful effects as well. According to a report by the United Nations Environment Program, 15% of plastic is on the surface of the water, another 15% is suspended in the ocean, and the remaining 70% is actually on the ocean floor. So for this reason, filter feeding organisms are a lot more susceptible to the consumption of plastic. According to an article for the Institute for Marine and Coastal Research called The Problem with Plastics, Waste, and Microplastics in the Sea and Ocean, they did a study and examined the amount of plastics in the intestinal tract of a sole and found that of the 533 individual fish, 95% of them contain plastic. Microplastics can cause gastrointestinal problems in fish and filter feeders. Because a research article from the Political Library of Science, Kay Critchell's Effects of Microplastic Exposure on the Body Condition and Behavior of Planktivorous Reef, she admits that although chemical effects haven't appropriately been researched, there are definite physical effects, such as abrasions in the stomach or the microplastics filling up their stomach and giving them a false sense of like being filled up, and then they die of hunger. Another thing is that these microplastics are moving up the food chain from smaller organisms all the way up to humans. And whenever humans consume plastics, it's mostly through shellfish. Whenever we eat regular fish, they're like we remove the intestines, so the plastic is also removed. But shellfish we eat whole and therefore consume much more microplastics. An article from Ghent University by Colin Jansen, Microplastics in Bivalves, claimed that humans consume over 11,000 particles of plastic a year by eating shellfish. I hope I brought to light just how big a problem these microparticles are. Today I've informed you over the effects of microplastic are having on the ocean, and I've supplied you with information over what microplastics are, the prevalence of microplastics, and the effect they're having on the living world. Admittedly, large plastics are causing visible damage to the environment now, but if left untreated, microplastics could prove to be just as big or bigger of a cause for the environment.